sitting in a high school or even a middle school English class, and the teacher holds up a class set of books, the next required reading project. Groans escape the lips of your peers, and maybe even your own. The teacher explains how we will just have to push through, as the reading is something that we must do by state law. However, why do books like these have to evoke such disgust and dread in our minds? Most classics are old, but why does that mean they cannot be enjoyed still? Required reading, classics specifically, teach us about our history, simply make us smarter and more rounded individuals, and delve into many themes and ideals, and even controversies that are still massive in 2017. To begin, classics teach us about American and foreign histories in a much more interesting way than textbooks can. Classics, a lot of the time, are set in times that are considered long ago. This can teach us a lot about how the world was back then. However, since the book has interesting characters and a plot to become involved in, it is so much easier to get yourself to read. I'll be the first one to admit textbooks are normally boring, but if I am reading about a time period in a work of fiction, I am so much more likely to retain the information. Of course, the plot line and the characters is made up, but most of the settings are real historical times and places. For example, the novel Les Miserables by Victor Hugo is set in 17th century France during the French Revolution and paints a more visual picture of the conflict than a history book ever could. Classics are just a much more interesting way to learn history while also enjoying an entertaining plot. Additionally, reading classic literature can simply make us smarter. The challenging language and sentence structure of classics, of simply older novels, can make us better readers and smarter people. In an article by Liz Dwyer referring to Philip Davis' study of the brain and Shakespeare, it is stated, Davis says that those creative mistakes make our brains shift mental pathways and open possibilities. The more exposure we get to such creativity, the more alive our brain becomes. He also says that the way we teach writing and reading today is too predictable, that we could use some variety. That is, in his words, it gradually deadens the brain. I'm sure as students, we can all agree, Shakespeare does make us think. His iambic pentameter and complicated way of writing takes some analyzation and a lot of thought to really understand what he's trying to get across. It is a beautiful way of writing. For example, in Shakespeare's Macbeth, he writes, "Look like an innocent flower, but be the serpent under it." In actuality, this means nothing about a flower or a snake, but that looks can be deceiving. However, this is not obvious at first read. It takes some time to get it. Finally, classic literature teaches us so many life lessons that we can use in our everyday lives. Classics offer such a wide range of themes that there is always something to be learned from them. To Kill a Mockingbird, written by Harper Lee, tackles various serious topics like racism, rape, and social injustice when Atticus Finch must take part in a trial against a black man accused of raping a white woman in the 1930s. It also speaks about making assumptions about people before you truly know them, in the case of Boo Radley. The longtime classic, and one of my personal absolute favorites, Jane Eyre, reflects a lot of feminist-type lessons like taking what you want, becoming more than your past, and choosing your own destiny. Zoe Triska says in her article, she is the epitome of a strong woman. She teaches the importance of self-reliance. She supports herself at a time when it was extremely hard for a woman to do such a thing on her own. In my opinion, Jane is a great person to look to in order to become a strong, independent woman. Next, I bring you to Orwell's infamous 1984. If you are not familiar with it, it is set in the year 1984, and the government, or Big Brother, has taken over completely. Nothing is private, and nothing is your choice. Unlike some novels, I believe this one, instead of teaching us messages from our past, give us some insight into what our world could possibly come to. Boschke says in his New York Times article, published in 1984 conveniently, Orwell did not believe that 35 years after the publication of his book, the world would be ruled by Big Brother, but he often proclaimed that 1984 could happen if man did not become aware of the assaults on his personal freedom and did not defend his most precious right, the right to have his own thoughts. In conclusions, classics are beautiful pieces of literature that can teach us so much about history, help us get smarter, and teach us so many life lessons. So, I encourage you, next time your teacher pulls out a book and everyone groans, get excited and get ready to go on an adventure. Thank you.